Hey there everybody, it's TJ with ShopBot Tools, and today's training we're going to look at efficient cutting. And there's a lot of different techniques, whether it's in the CAD software or out on the machine. So glad you could join us, and let's get started. Let's start the first one here in the CAD software, and what we're actually going to be looking at is the start point of the cut. So you can see a series of rectangles here on this file, and when you're just in your regular selection mode, it's just a selected highlighted pink vector. Well, if you look into node editing, it actually shows you a green square. That's the actual start point of where the cut is. And just in case you didn't know, you are actually able to right click on any one of these points and make that your start point. So that's what we'll be looking at here for this first example, is ordering the start points of the cut. So let's look at the toolpath portion, and instead of changing each one individually, what's nice about the Vectric software here is when I created my profile toolpath, which I'm just doing a default toolpath here, meaning I already set it up so you didn't have to learn about what bits and whatnot, because what we're looking at down here is you do have the option for start at, but right now by default it is just keeps current start points, which you can see is in the bottom left corner of each of these rectangles. So just let me, you can hit calculate here and show you what's going on. Before we even go into the cut, what I'm trying to show you with start points are the ShopBot starts right here. You can see the red line is not cutting, it's just the tip of your bit traveling over to where it plunges down in here, which is the green Z movement. So it starts its cut here, it obviously works itself around in a rectangular cut, and then it lifts up going over to where the next start point is. So you have a distance of whatever size that rectangle is between this point and this point of traveling above the board. So that's not cutting time, that's just travel time. And that adds up. I mean, look at just these set of rectangles here, how much red lines you have above. So you can see all this in the 3D CAD without even hitting preview. I'm actually seeing all the different traveling up above the bit. So I'm trying to maneuver around here so you can see that that red line is actually up above your board. That's just the ShopBot moving its bit from one spot over to the next start point. So that's just that's downtime or not cutting time, if you want to call it that. So right here with the default toolpath, using the bottom left corner, using our summary of all toolpaths, it's a 9-minute and 26-second file. So let's go into setting this up and efficiently optimizing our start point. So what's a nice feature in versions 9.0 and later is I can go back into my default toolpath and I can go right down here to start at, and I can click at my optimized start points. And now I'll just change this from default to this one has been optimized, and hit calculate. And again, you can see now that the red travel distance has changed because the start points are in different locations. Use the software, the algorithms that go behind this, and it moved the start points. So you got to think about the type of material that you're using. One, do you want to optimize for time, but also two, some people like to specifically have their start points in certain spots depending on if they're ramping or where they want to cut into the file. So there's a lot more to this if you really want to get deeper into it. But what I'm looking at just for today's training is just optimizing, just showing you some different ways of doing it. And by optimizing the start points using the setting in the software, we saved, we're down from 926 to 905. We saved 20 seconds in there. And 20 seconds isn't a whole lot, but think about that when you have 50 sheets of material that you're doing of these, so that adds up. And if you wanted to manually set your start points, you don't have to go off what the software has here for optimize. You can move start points to the closest to the selected point. I've also seen a lot of people like to actually come in here and they will take and use the node editing function, where you can come in with the node editing and actually move your start points to specific spots. And some people like to manually move their start point. It's a shortcut key is P. So I don't even need to right click on each time. I can just hover over that and hit P. And some people like to put their start points in specific spots. But like I said before, depending on your type of cut that you're doing or your type of material, you may not want your start point on the corner. You may want it in the middle if you're ramping and you don't want to have that start point in the middle. But just to show you what I can do by manually moving these around, when we had the software optimize it, we were down to 9 minutes and 5 seconds by me manually putting those start points on there. I do need to go back in, start point, keep the current start points, which are the ones that I just moved it to, re-hit calculate, and you'll see here that that went from 9:05 to just 9 minutes. So again, now it comes to the point of, we're saving 5 seconds. Is 5 seconds worth saving where you really want your cut to be from that corner? And like I said, other people, depending on your type of cut or your material, you may not want to use that corner as a cut. Some people like to put their start points out here in the middle so that when they ramp in, it's not built off a corner. But what we're trying to show you with this first part is you have the option of moving your start points. And the less amount of red that you have up above your part moving back and forth, the less time you have of the ShopBot just traveling from point to point. So moving start points is one, and now let's get into looking at ordering of the cut. Okay, let's look next at ordering the actual cut. This is just a training blank file. These are little blanks we cut out before training for customers to practice on. I go in here again, profile toolpath. I just leave everything as default. When I calculate that out, it shows that I have a 20-minute and 24-second file. So what I'll look at next is going into here where I can actually click on order. And just for anybody at home that's not seeing these options, it's because you don't have this up here checked, show advanced toolpath. When that's not checked, all you have is the option for ramps and tabs. So what we're actually doing is going into the advanced setting where we can do what we did before with start points and now order. And instead of all these default ones selected, what I would do is I go ahead here and click on shortest path, and then when I calculate this out, we'll see the new direction and the new cut time. And this time when I hit calculate, it brings up my preview, and I go right back here to my time, and we're down to 19 minutes and 39 seconds. So yeah, we're about 50 seconds less than what we were on the previous one. And yeah, now I could go back and I can mess with my start points as well and put the two of those together. So it all depends on the type of cut that you're doing, okay? Big long cuts are going to get up to speed and cut longer. Shorter, little smaller parts are going to be more ramping down. More parts, you got more to order. So obviously your times and stuff are going to vary. You may sometimes mess with some of these settings and only have a 5 or 10 second change. But sometimes when you have a lot of parts and you have a lot of sheets of material that you need to go through, optimizing start points and order of the cut will really add up. Alright, this one's one of my favorites is how do you move this thing from 0, 0? It gets in your way every time. You get done with your file, I don't want to reach my hand under that bit. Now I gotta go open up the keypad, move the bit out of the way, and now I can then come back and then pull the part out. So let's look at that. How do we just move that using the keypad? Okay, there, it's out of the way. It's a little bit more convenient for getting it out, but there's got to be a better way. So one option is right here in the CAD software. So in my Vectric software here, I switch over to my Toolpath side, and if I look underneath material setup, right here is a little set button. And it does say right here home position is 0, 0. That is your default home/start position. Should also, it could also say /finish position, because 0, 0 is where it just went in that video. But for my for this training blank that I like to use, I like to go over 12 inches in the X and about 16 inches back in the Y, so it moves out of the way. The next person can come up, put their blank into the fixture, and then hit go and start cutting. So I've actually just moved my home/start position to 12/16. So at the end of every file, it will move to that position. So hit OK, do your tool pathing in there. Let's take a look at how that would look. So if the file would be finished, it moves back automatically. No messing around with you and the keypad. Pull your part out, hands are safe, put the next part in and go. Alright, same thing here on the big dog. It goes to 0, 0 by default, which is annoying. So let's look at a different method. So instead of doing it in the CAD software, this time you can actually use your keypad and set it up. And I like to do this because sometimes I'm using different machines and I hate to have a default home um, that's for a larger machine and then the little guy tries to go there and it crashes. So I like to use the keypad, and the first thing that you want to do is type in the position where you want your start and finish to be. On my big machine, I like it to be 4848. So first I'll hit go to, and it's going to go to that area. And the reason I like 4848 is because it moves the gantry halfway down the machine and then to the back side of that machine. And now for me, who uses a lot of screws for hold down, I can now walk around pretty much the entire machine. I can get up on the machine if I need to, but what I can do is I can access most of the machine from this position. So what we're going to do here is move to the finished spot that we want, which in this case was 4848. And then down here you have your memorized locations. And these are just, if you hover over them, they tell you where you want to right click and what you want to make them to be. And right here I'm going to right click on memorize location 1, and I'm going to call this my whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call this my end of file location, and I hit OK. So now at any time when I get done running a file, before a file, at any time I can just type on this and there it goes to that end of file location. So just for grins to show this to you again, say I was actually at, I'll use my keypad again, let me just move off the position so you can see wherever I may be, say it's 0, 0 or wherever. If I'm outside of keypad, all I have to do now is click on it or hit K for keypad, which is K on the keyboard, and then spot number 1. And I click on 1, I hit 1, or I click on the button there. Oops, sorry, I had moved my axes down for my safe Z location. And what it's saying is, one or more of your vertical axes below safe Z, are you want to continue, or would you like to use the keypad and move it up, which is a nice warning in case you have clamps or anything in the way. And in this case I see it's just my open machine, so I go ahead and hit OK. And now I'm moving back to my 4848 position, and I'm now at that spot. And let's look at that on the ShopBot here. So you would see here when the file gets done running, the machine automatically goes to 4848, and you can take off your part with ease. Another option. Alright, great. We're moving along good. Let's look at the next one. So you're going to find yourself sometimes with signs like this or projects that have multiple bits. So we're going to look here at Toolpath ordering for bit changes. So let me bring up the CAD file and show you what we're working with here. There is our vectors and our drawing, and over here is our toolpath. So we have several different toolpaths. We have 6 to be exact. And you can see that let's just do one more quick preview here in the 3D preview. It shows you a little bit different than the picture. So it does a bevel, it does a pocket. You can see the raised text where it has to do a bit change. It does a prism toolpath around all of the letters. Here it's putting a texture in the background, and then the last toolpath, number 6, is then the final cutout. So when you get into projects like this that have multiple bits, it becomes an issue with ordering over here. So I just wanted to point out that the order that these are, it doesn't matter the order that you create your toolpaths. You can create them in whatever order you want. And that's how the order that they spit out down here. The order that they read from top to bottom is the order that the CNC machine, the ShopBot, is going to cut when you save these. So right now, when I go to click on Save Toolpaths and I turn all of these on, if I was to save all of these, you can see that we have a V-bit first, then we switch it to a 1/2 inch straight, then we switch it to an 1/8 inch straight, then we switch it back to a V90, and then we go to a ball nose and then a 1/4 inch down cut. So right here is an unnecessary bit change is what I'm trying to point out for this example. In the case of if it was something where you had to carve something away ahead of time to pocket it to get to where that V bit would be, I could understand where you needed to switch out a bit and then put it back in later. But in this case, the way this file was drawn, the bevel was just put on first on these vectors so people would see what they look like in the preview as we were going through and drawing this. So right now this bevel does not need to be first. Think about the cut before you start moving it. Yep, that bevel just goes around the inside and the outside of this border. So there's no reason for that to go first. I can actually grab that one, and remember, when you're moving things around, it doesn't matter what is checked and not checked. These check marks are just visually what show up over here on the screen. It's what is highlighted text. So this bevel, and notice these two here, they do a really good job of putting the what, if it's a ball nose, it has a rounded bottom. If it's a end mill, it has a flat. And here this bevel one has a pointed bottom because it's a V bit. So I will select it, and I will use my arrow keys and move it down. So what I'm just trying to show you is something pretty simple. A lot of people have already probably caught on to this one, but by just moving that down a little bit, I've saved the operator of this file from doing an unnecessary bit change. So if the file allows it, try to minimize the bit changes, and that was something that will help save you some time and make your cutting more efficient as you keep going here. There really is something to be said about having a nice flat table. It's really going to make a difference when you're working with a flat table that you have surfaced recently. When you first purchase your machine, you should definitely surface it. There's a surfacing routine built into the control software. You could also go into the Vectric software, your CAD, and design a rectangle the size of your table and mill it off. Alright, you can see all three of these tables that we've looked at have been used. You can see obviously the cuts in the spoil board, but what you can't always see are any warps in the board that you've had maybe through different moisture levels and whatnot in the air. So I would always recommend working on a flat surface table, and that will really help with your cutting. Alright, this next one may seem a little basic, but makes a lot of sense. So it's just a picture. I'm going to explain through this instead of trying to show it through a video. A lot of times you have multiple bits in a file. So this file here has a ball nose, a V bit, and a end mill. And sometimes when you have say a pocket that has a prism toolpath or a clearance toolpath where you have to get multiple bits at the same depth, we have seen over time where you may get a line showing the difference in depth. Well, one way to get around that is by zeroing your bits in the same spot every time. There are things like material that are not always perfectly flat and parallel throughout. So what I like to do on parts before I run them is I like to, if I'm going to have multiple bits, I like to put an X somewhere on my material that's not being cut away. Or on my spoil board, if that's something that I want to zero there, I'll put an X on the spoil board. And then every time I change a bit, I move to that location, and you can set that up in your file like we previously saw with our home position in the CAD software. We can do it with the keypad and have a memorized location, but every time you change a bit, if you do it on the same portion of that material, it's going to alleviate any discrepancies that you have with material thickness. And same thing with the zeroing plate. I have an X on my plate, and I try to get it within, a quarter of an inch. The same thing every time. So every time I change a bit, I use the keypad, move it over above that X, put the next bit in, hold the Z0 plate, approximately right over that spot, and that really does help, especially in cuts where you want to have multiple bits at the same depth and you need to line them back up. Alright, the next one we're going to look at here is file naming. Not just the name of the file, but where you store the file, the name of the toolpaths. Let's go ahead and get started. So this one here is the climbing pyramid. And just to show you what kind of file it is that we're looking at here, it's just a small little pyramid with a ramp for my boys to climb up and down on. Just a fun little project. There's all kinds of different ones out there that you can make. So for this one here, first thing I want to look at is the file folder where it's saved. So in this file folder, you can see I have the CAD file, I have my toolpaths in a separate file, and then I just have the picture in there. So again, really I find a lot of the hardest things with people coming through training is when I ask them to go find a file off their desktop in a certain folder, and they're messing around trying to find that. So naming your files something and putting them in a position that you can actually find later on goes a long way. I know that might seem like the most common sense of all of the stuff we've looked at today, but that really is probably the most important. So with this example here, I look over here at my toolpath side, and I'm a pretty big stickler on myself about how I name my toolpaths, because by default, if I was to just create, say, a new toolpath and select whatever it is that I want to do and save it, it just becomes profile 1 or profile 2 or pocket 1 or pocket 2, so on and so forth. So for me, I found early on that I would want to just run through stuff and get it designed and cut, and then as I have to come back to things to edit them or share them with others, what is a profile 1? Profile 1 is nothing more than something I have to click on and go through again. So every time now when I create a toolpath, I make sure that down here along the bottom where it allows you to name it, I give it a name that I can come back to later on and know what they are. And again, there's no right or wrong to this. It's personal preference. Some people like to put the name of what the type of cut is, which is what you can see what I do. Some people like to put in what type of bit it is. So again, just naming things goes a long way down the road. And same things with saving things. Now again, when you save your toolpaths out, obviously you have the option of saving everything as one toolpath, which you can see I don't even have that. It errors it out on mine because what I tend to do is I tend to break up my toolpaths and save them by the bit. So there's a 1/4 inch up cut. If I was just to hit save right now, it just comes up with climbing pyramid. Well, when I get finally around to cutting this, I don't know what climbing pyramid means. I have to now go spend time either going back into the file or hovering over things and seeing what they are. So I like to group my, not group is the wrong word, I should say. It's a different term in the software, but I like to put together, bound up the ones that I want per bit. So these here that are upcut, I save as a toolpath. Obviously, they hold down separate, but here with it's a 1/4 inch compression, these three I'll save together, and then I'll uncheck these and save these. And for some people that are already asking, what is he talking about? Well, luckily, I named this in a way that I can easily reference. So when I look into my toolpaths here, I have a really nice way of referencing what I've drawn over here for my toolpath. So you can see these here as number 1, meaning that I have, that's my first one that I want to run because I have them in the order that I want to save them in. I just, again, personal preference. I don't like to save them all as one big toolpath. I like to save them and then in between bit changes manually zero them. And it's just a peace of mind is all that is for myself. Nothing right or wrong about whatever way you do it. But here it is the number that I want it in the order of cut, the name of the file, what it is, what toolpath it is, so I can think about that, and also what bit it is. So this is a 1/4 inch upcut end mill. And as you get into saving these, this is great. I really like this. Buddy does this as well up front in sales, and he's a big one with this too. And I really like the way he does it, and I've molded how I do it off his. And a couple things to keep in mind when you get into doing this. You have to stay away from special characters. And when I say special characters, I'm not talking about Buddy. I'm talking about using things like the @ symbol and backslashes, pluses. If you need to use any kind of characters besides numbers and letters, you can use a period or a underscore. Stay away from even spaces. Some Windows computers get a little bit grumpy, especially when you get into using the special characters. But yeah, just come up with a system that works for you. Stay away from the special characters. Order them. Keep the name in there, what the type of cut is, and then also what bit it is. So now when I walk out to the ShopBot, and maybe I'm not going to get to this till I design it today, and I don't get to actually go out to my shop and cut it for 3 or 4 more days. I really don't want to spend another 20 minutes back and forth with the CAD file. I want to go, oh, okay, yep, this is it. Bit number 1, check, is the hold down with the upcut. I get done running this. Oh, great, it's the same bit. Now I'm doing the through holes. Okay, looks like I need to do a bit change. So again, just another tip of naming files, and I think that will help you go a long way with making your cutting more efficient. Hey, that was a great start into getting efficient cutting. We looked at 6 different types of methods, tips, techniques that will work for you. There's a lot more. We could get out there into Toolpath templating and layers and all that other stuff, but just to keep this tutorial under a half hour, we're going to move on and tell you where you can find more stuff on your own. The ShopBot forum is always an excellent place to find and talk with other ShopBotters across the world. Our website is a very valuable resource as well. You can find lots of different information on here and projects and training and other stuff. Make sure you sign up for our newsletter. Also check out the Vectric website if you had any questions on any of the CAD stuff today. They have lots of tutorials too that explain more in depth what I was showing you today. But otherwise, what a great training, great turnout. Thank you all for being here today, and we look forward to seeing you all again next time.